The air was thick with a tension that could be felt even before the world heard it. A kind of electric charge that hums just before lightning splits the sky. Because this time the storm wasn't natural, it was political, military, and raw. Trump, never a stranger to controversy, found himself caught on tape as hell broke loose in a military blitz that nobody saw coming. And the weight of those moments spread like wildfire across every screen, every conversation, and every nerve that still believed the world was stable. The recording, grainy at first but unmistakable in its authenticity, was more than just sound and image. It was a window into chaos. A battlefield not only of soldiers and strategy but of power, personality, and the kind of decisions that could shift history in an instant. The tape didn't whisper, it roared, and the echoes refused to fade. For Trump, every stage of his political career has been marked by a defiance of convention, a brazen dismissal of limits, and an uncanny ability to turn crisis into spectacle. But this was something else. The tape showed a man under fire, figuratively and literally, caught in a moment where military precision collided with political theater, and in that collision emerged the kind of drama that would leave the world shaken. The military blitz wasn't just a background event. It was the storm that laid bare the cracks in command, the raw edges of ego, and the fragile line between control and collapse. Watching and listening to the tape, there was no mistaking the rising panic, the scattered commands, the urgency of voices that had grown accustomed to order, but now stumbled in disorder. Trump's voice was there, unmistakable, sharp, sometimes commanding, sometimes faltering, a tone that revealed more than words could ever confess. The tape began circulating like contraband knowledge, passed hand to hand, link to link, as though people knew they were holding something forbidden, explosive, something that could alter not just perception, but the very foundation of power. And as it spread, the story grew. Commentators parsed every syllable, every pause, every shouted command and clipped response, searching for meaning in the chaos. The military blitz it captured wasn't just an operation. It was a storm breaking loose at the very heart of power, a storm that left behind not just wreckage, but revelations. This was a scene of men and women trained for war, but caught instead in a war of politics, loyalty, and survival. Their professionalism pressed against the unpredictable force of a leader who thrived in spectacle, but now seemed engulfed by it. There is something uniquely captivating about being caught on tape, because unlike speeches carefully written, unlike appearances stage-managed, unlike tweets designed for shock, the tape is unvarnished reality. It is the sound of things as they are, not as they're supposed to be, and in this case, that reality was unflinching. The chaos of the military blitz spilled through in every background sound, the whir of machines, the crack of gunfire, the rush of movement. Trump's voice, layered above it all, carried both bravado and an undercurrent of unease, the kind of unease that even the most practiced politician can't conceal when the stakes are beyond calculation, and the people listening could feel it. It wasn't just an event. It was immersion into a moment where the powerful were stripped of polish, where history unfolded not in press releases but in the raw texture of sound. The military blitz itself became almost mythic in scale, a lightning strike operation that came with ferocity and suddenness, the kind of maneuver that leaves little time for planning or reflection. The tape captured the sound of command centers rattling with urgency, the clash between generals insisting on order and a leader determined to impose his own rhythm on the storm. Trump's instinct has always been to dominate the room, to shape perception through force of personality, but the tape revealed that personality meeting its match in the relentless speed of military reality. The generals' voices were clipped, firm, insistent on protocol, while Trump pushed back, demanding, questioning, occasionally veering into rhetoric while the chaos pressed for decisions. The clash between authority and improvisation was stark, and it was that clash that made the tape so electrifying. Around the world, reactions unfolded in waves. Allies listened with concern, adversaries with a kind of grim fascination, while the American public was left to grapple with the spectacle of a commander-in-chief caught in real time as events spun beyond control. For some, the tape confirmed their deepest fears, that Trump's approach to power was all performance, ill-suited for the cold, precise demands of military engagement. For others, it was proof of his raw authenticity, a leader unfiltered, unafraid to clash with the establishment even in the middle of blitz and battle. But regardless of interpretation, no one could deny its impact. It wasn't polished. It wasn't planned. It was raw and it was real, and that is what made it impossible to ignore. The longer people listened, the more layers unfolded. There were moments when Trump's voice surged with confidence, almost relishing the confrontation, only to be interrupted by the unrelenting rhythm of crisis. There were moments of silence that spoke louder than words, the kind of silence that comes when decisions hang in the balance. There were voices in the background, some calm, some frantic, reminding listeners that this was not theater, this was lived reality. And all of it, every second, added to the sense that the world had been given a glimpse behind the curtain of power at its most vulnerable. The tape didn't just reveal Trump, it revealed the machinery of crisis itself. Military operations are designed to be controlled, ordered, precise, but in this blitz the tape showed the messiness of reality. Strategies collided with unpredictability, plans faltered under the pressure of speed, and the human element, fear, pride, defiance, broke through the structure of command. Trump's presence in that maelstrom magnified it, because his instinct for improvisation clashed against the very system designed to avoid it. The result wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a clash of worlds, the political and the military, the chaotic and the disciplined, the theatrical and the deadly serious. As listeners replayed it again and again, certain phrases began to stick, certain moments began to define the narrative. Trump demanding to be heard over the noise, a general snapping back with urgency, the muffled sound of alarms, the unmistakable note of disorder. Each replay deepened the sense that this was history unfolding in unfiltered sound. And with each replay, the legend of the tape grew. It wasn't just evidence. It was an artifact of a moment when hell broke loose, and the world was left to hear what power sounds like when it falters. What made it even more gripping was the way the tape refused to offer closure. It didn't end with resolution neatly tied. It ended like chaos itself, abrupt, incomplete, leaving listeners with questions rather than answers. What exactly happened in the aftermath of the Blitz? What decisions were made that weren't captured in sound? What consequences unfolded beyond the scope of the recording? The lack of conclusion became part of its power, forcing the public to imagine the unseen, to fill the silence with speculation, and to realize that sometimes the most important truths are revealed not in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. The frenzy surrounding the tape grew to a cultural fever pitch. Analysts dissected it on loop. Journalists chased every angle. Politicians lined up to spin it to their advantage. Supporters and critics alike clung to it as proof of their narratives. But beyond the spin was something larger, an undeniable sense that the tape had pulled back the curtain on the precariousness of power. To hear Trump caught in that moment was to hear a leader exposed not in a press conference or a rally, but in the raw crucible of crisis. And in that crucible, the world saw not just Trump, but the fragile balance of command in a moment when the stakes could not be higher. The story of Trump caught on tape during the military blitz is one of those rare moments where politics, war, and spectacle collide to create something unforgettable. It was the kind of story that doesn't just dominate headlines, but etches itself into the cultural memory, because it reveals more than facts. It reveals character, fragility, and the thin line between control and collapse. To listen was to be there, to feel the heat of the blitz, the urgency of voices, the strain of command under pressure. And as the world keeps replaying it, the echoes will continue to shape the way people see Trump, the military, and the very nature of power itself.